If someone had told me that I wouldn't get to spend my wedding night alone with my husband, I would have laughed in disbelief. But that night, my wedding night, was the first time I realized something was very wrong. And it all started with the sound of her slippers. Flip, flop, flip, flop. I was in the bathroom, changing into my silk nightgown. I had planned this night candle in details. Candles, perfume, the perfect playlist. After all the stress of wedding plan, I just wanted to hold the man I loved and breathe in the beginning of forever. But the knocked game. It was soft as first, then firmer, then the voice. Oya, open the door, jare, make I lie down small. My waist is paining me. My husband laughed. Sure, I told you my mama doesn't like her beds, he said, already heading for the door. I peeked out from behind the bathroom door, confused. What do you mean, lie down? She will just rest a bit, don't worry, he said, brushing it off like it was normal. She does this when she travels. The bed in the guest room is too small. But this is our wedding night, I whispered, heart sinking. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. Babe, it's just a bit. You know she's old. Old? His mother was barely 60, active, loud, controlling. She ran a shop, led the women's group in church, and made sure to remind everyone that she raises her son without a single coin from any useless man. Still in disbelief, I watched as he opened the door and let her in. She entered like she owned the room, like she built it with her hands. She didn't even look at me, just removed her wrapper, fluffed a pillow, and slipped into the middle of our bed. My side. Put off that candle, I beg, she said, fanning herself. You want to burn this house? I stood there frozen. My chest tightened. I looked at my husband silently, begging for support. He sat beside her and smiled. She's just tired. Tomorrow everything will be normal. But it wasn't. I barely slept that night. The three of us lay on the bed like sardines in a can. Every time I shifted, her leg brushed mine. At a point, she even snored loudly. I turned to face the world, hot tears forming in my eyes. This wasn't what I signed up for. The next morning, she woke before us and clapped her hands loudly. Wake up, wake up. This is not honeymoon, oh, this is my son's house. I want to boil water. I sat up, dazed. My husband stretched lazily and gave her the same smile he gave me during our vows. Mama, you want me to carry the pot? A hen? Now you are talking. And just like that, they left me in the room, alone in my own marriage. Later that day, I tried to talk to him. Why did she sleep in her room? I asked gently, not wanting to seem disrespectful. He sighed. Babe, you know how close I am to my mom. It's just for a while, she said. She wants to be around until you are strong enough to manage things. I'm not sick, I replied, trying to control my voice, and we just got married. She shouldn't be alone. He shrugged. Just give her time. She's adjusting too. Adjusting? She was adjusting. What about me? That evening, it happened again. She brought her wrapper, pillow, and blanket. No questions asked. She even had the audacity to say, I like this mattress. Very firm. Good for my back. I stood by the bed, still in my wrapper, and didn't even know what to do. Mama, I tried to speak. Maybe you can try the guest room again. She turned her head sharply. You want to chase me away from my son's room? Is it now a sin for a mother to sleep beside her child? My husband kept quiet, dead silence. I looked at him, pleading with my eyes. He avoided my gaze and said, let's not make this a big issue tonight. We will talk about it tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. I started noticing little things. How she always sat between us when we watched TV. How she would call him to come lie down beside her during the day and rub her back. How she took over my kitchen and rearranged everything without asking. How she spoke to me like I was the house girl. I wanted to be respectful. I was raised to honor elders, but this was not honor. This was intrusion. This was something else entirely. A twisted triangle, a marriage with three corners, and somehow I was the outsider. That night, I called my elder sister. Sis, she sleeps between us. Every night, she won't leave. She paused. What does your husband say? Nothing. He acts like it's normal, like I'm overreacting. She hissed, that's witch. Or madness, or both. I laughed bitterly. It's not funny. No, I know, but you need to take control before it gets worse. How? I whispered. How do I fight a mother-in-law on her son's bed? There was silence, and then her voice firm. You are the wife. Start acting like it. Don't let her settle. But it was already too late. She had settled. She had brought her pillow, her slippers, her authority. And on the first night of my marriage, I learned that love is not always fairy tale. Sometimes it's a bed with three people, and one of them isn't going anywhere. When people talk about marriage problems, they usually mention cheating, financial stress, or in-laws who live far away and gossip from a distance. But my problem wore a wrapper, walked around our house like the landlady, and slept beside my husband every night. And the worst part? He said nothing. It was been 1 week since the wedding, 7 days since my mother-in-law moved in, uninvited, unburdened, and firmly planted herself in our lives and our bedroom. Every night she climbed into her bed like it was her right, and every night I grew more invisible. I tried to talk to him again. I waited for the right moment, made him his favorite meal, yam pottage with dried fish, and smiled as we sat at the dining table. When we were alone, I said gently, Babe, can we talk about something? Please don't shut me down. He wiped his mouth and nodded, distracted. What is it? It's about your mom, I began, choosing my words like I was diffusing a bomb. I'm finding it hard to adjust. Adjust? He looked confused. To what? To her, sleeping in our bed. He leaned back in his chair, again with his stick. Again with this talk? Yes, again, I said, firmer this time. Because I thought the first few nights were temporary, but it's been a whole week. He shook his head. You don't get it. She's used to sleeping beside me. We've always been close. Even as a child, when I had nightmares, she was the one who comforted me. And now that you're married, I asked, am I supposed to be okay with her being the third person in our bed every night? He sighed. You don't understand. She's just here for a while. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask, a while? How long is a while? A week? A month? A year? Instead, I said softly, you promised me a home where I do feel safe. I don't feel safe. I feel like a visitor in my own marriage. He rubbed his temple. You are exaggerating. There it was, that word, exaggerating. It stabbed deeper than any insult. That night, I did something different. I waited until they were both asleep, my husband and his mother snoring softly beside each other. Then I tiptoed to the living room and curled up on the couch. Finally, silence. Finally, space. But sleep never came. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I got here. Was I weak for not standing my ground harder? Was I foolish for thinking love would be enough? In the early hours of the morning, I returned to the room, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want her to say I was disrespectful for sleeping outside. I slipped in beside them unnoticed. The next morning, she laughed as she folded her wrapper. You see, when a woman learns patience, she wins her husband's heart. I knew you would come back. I didn't respond. She smiled smugly and left the room. Later that week, things only got worse. She started correcting everything I did. Why are you cooking egusi like that? That's not how my son likes it. Don't use this detergent. I raised him with a different one. You are bathing too late in the morning. He's used to women who wake early. She said these things with a smile, but they cut like knives. And when I complained to my husband, he said nothing. Once, after a particular nasty comment, I walked into the room fuming. She just told me I don't know how to clean in front of the gate man. He was lying on the bed, scrolling through his phones. She didn't mean it like that, he said without looking up. I know exactly how she meant it. I snapped. She humiliated me every chance she gets. She's just old-fashioned, he mumbled. You know she talks without thinking sometimes. So why won't you ever defend me? That finally made him look up. I don't like trouble, okay? You two should try and get along. You're both important to me. Important? Yet every time she insults me, he stayed quiet. Every time she controlled our home, he looked the other way. Every night she climbed into our bed. He welcomed her without questions. One night I asked him again, would you ever choose me over her? He hesitated too long, then said, don't make me choose, please. I nodded slowly. The answer was already clear. He wouldn't choose because he already had. That Saturday, we went to church together. My mother-in-law wore white lace and sat proudly beside her son. I walked a step behind them like a maid. Everyone smiled at us, called me the lucky bride, complimented our union. If only they knew. After service, the pastor's wife pulled me aside. I hope you are adjusting well there. I smiled, by God's grace. But inside, I was crumbling. That night, something in me shifted. I watched them laugh over old memories. She told stories of his childhood, how he once followed her to the market and got lost, how he used to hold her hand while falling asleep. He laughed like a boy again. I sat in silence, forgotten. Then she turned to me and said, you should be grateful. Most mother-in-law don't even visit. I'm helping you. Helping? Helping who? Because I didn't feel helped. I feel erased. Before going to bed, I looked into the mirror. My eyes were tired. My smile was gone. My voice felt smaller every day. And my husband, he said nothing, but his silence says everything. At first, I thought it was just a phrase. That the intrusion, the constant presence of my mother-in-law in our home was something that would even erase with time. But as the weeks passed, I quickly realized that she wasn't just in our home, she was taking over. The first sign that things were changing wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like a small crack in the surface of seemingly perfect marriage. She started helping. She started imposing little rules, not ones that were obvious at first, but they grew and grew until I realized I couldn't do anything without her. It started with the kitchen. One evening, I was preparing dinner for the both of us, my husband and I. I just cut up some vegetable for stew when she walked in without so much as a greeting. She immediately began inspecting my work. You are cutting this tomato too thick. Doesn't your mother teach you to slice it finely? She asked with a raised eyebrow. Her voice dripped with that ever-present tone of superiority. I blinked, momentarily stunned. I've been cutting tomatoes this way for years, I said, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. She clicked her tongue. and reached for the knife. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to help. And just like that, the knife was in her hand. She continued slicing the tomatoes, her hands moving quickly as she murmured about how I should be doing things differently. My son prefers tinier tomatoes. It cooks better. I stood frozen, my stomach twisting with a mix of frustration and helplessness. The kitchen, the one place I thought I could at least feel competent and in control, was now another place where I was being critiqued. A few days later, I noticed something else. She was always there when I was on the phone. I had been chatting with my best friend Chika about some work stress. I hadn't seen her in weeks and I missed talking to her. But the moment I picked up the phone, my mother-in-law appeared in the doorway. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, leaning against the frame of the door, arms crossed. I smiled awkwardly. "Chika, my best friend." "Best friend? And what's so important that you can't even spend time with your husband?" she asked, her voice sharp. "I was just talking," I said, my voice faltering under her gaze. "It's been a while since I caught up with her." She nodded, but there was no warmth in her expression. "Well, your husband needs attention too, you know. You can't be on the phone all day." I opened my mouth to respond, but she was already walking away, muttering something under her breath about marriage duties. The conversation with Chika ended abruptly and felt a weight settled over me. Every phone call, every conversation now feels scrutinized. I had never realized just how much I valued my personal space and time until it was constantly interrupted by her presence. Then came the rules about the house. One evening, I came home from a meeting to find the living room rearranged. The couches were pushed closer to the walls, the coffee table had been shifted, and a small shrine had been set up in the corner, adorned with candles and incense. I froze, unsure of what to say. "What's this?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "Oh, I just thought this would be a good spot for some spiritual cleansing," she said, casually brushing past me to the kitchen. "Spiritual cleansing?" I repeated, still processing what I was saying. "Why didn't you ask me before moving everything?" "Because I didn't think you would understand," she replied, her back to me as she pulled pots and pans out of the cupboard. "But don't worry, it's for the good of the home." I was speechless. The house, which had been ours, was no longer just mine and my husband. It had become a place where her beliefs and practices were slowly seeping in without consultation. I looked at the shrine and the incense crawling in the air. My frustration burned inside me, but there was nothing I could do. Not yet without causing a bigger sin. Over the next few days, more rules began to emerge. "Your husband's shoes need to be in the closet," she told me one morning as I tried to leave for work. "Not by the door like that. It's bad luck." I frowned, "But he likes them there. You always leave them by the door." "No, it's not proper," she insisted, her voice unwavering. I could feel my patience thinning, but I said nothing. Each battle, each moment of rebellion seemed more like an uphill struggle. Every small thing that was wrong in her eyes became my responsibility to correct. She started reorganizing my wardrobe as well. "You should fold these shirts this way," she told me one evening. "This is the right way to do it. Trust me." I smiled tightly. "I will fold them how I like." "But if you don't do it right, you'd make him unhappy," she responded, looking at me over her shoulder. Her words stung, but I bit my tongue. What could I say? It wasn't too long before I realized my mother-in-law was testing the boundaries of everything in my life. The little rules piled on top of one another until my life felt suffocated. She had staked her claim on the house, on my marriage, on every inch of my life. That night, I sat in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a cold mug of tea, trying to calm myself down. My husband was watching TV, as usual, and my mother-in-law was in the other room, humming to herself. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it all. I loved my husband. I really did. But this was unbearable. The sound of footsteps broke my thoughts. I turned to see my husband standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I spoke to my mom. She said quietly, "She told me you've been upset." My heart skipped a beat. Finally, I thought, a conversation, maybe now. He do see how serious this was. But when I looked at him, all I saw was someone caught between two words, someone unwilling to choose. "She just wants what's best for us," he said, sitting down across from me. "She's old-fashioned, but she's family. Can you try to be patient with her?" I stared at him, the words caught in my throat. "I'm not sure I can," I whispered, my voice trembling. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about patience. It was about controlling, about power, and my place in this marriage was no longer clear. Watch out for part 2.